3, 4, 5 moves to make a pass pawn into a queen. And Noctie, on the other hand, is going to take quite a lot of moves because it will have to destroy the pawns on the queen side. Hello everybody, my name is Emil Stefanov, International Master, and this is weekly scenario number 14 in Noctie. Let's get started. As always, if you have not practiced this position for yourself, make sure to do so before looking at the walkthrough. Now, this position is a pawn endgame. So we can see that we are up an extra pawn, which is going to be our way to win this position. Now, pawn endgames are very important to master. Why is that the case? Well, there are no other pieces on the board except the kings, both kings, and the pawns. So even if you're not that great in calculating a few moves ahead in very complex positions where all the pieces are on the board, in this situation, you should be able to calculate many moves ahead because all you're accounting for are pawns and the kings. So that is one of the reasons why I love pawn endgames. I'm able to calculate so many more moves ahead as opposed to normal positions. But pawn endgames are still tricky. Sometimes even having an extra pawn, depending on the way the pawns are positioned, will not be enough for a win. So we need to be a little bit careful. With that being said, first things first, we have the pass pawn. Always push the pass pawn first. Don't play f4, because after f5, obviously it's going to be harder to push the pass pawn. Of course, we have king f2, king f3, and e4. But as a general principle, always start by pushing the pass pawn. So we're going to play e4, followed up with f4, getting center space with those two pawns. And now I'm going to bring my king towards the center as much as I can. So I'm going to start with king f2. Now let's see what Noctie does. King e7, very logical, king e3. Now this is queen 4 difficulty in Noctie, so Noctie's playing the best way possible. As we can see, f6, trying to prevent me from making my pass pawn. I already could play e5 and try to get that pass pawn settled. However, what I'm going to try to do is have my king be able to infiltrate either the queen side or the king side, and then utilize my pawn as a way to distract the opponent's king. First things first, I will play king d4. I'm assuming king d6 will be played. And then a good thing to consider is pawn to c5 or even pawn to e5. Now, why is that the case? Well, if I play c5, then this is a check. So Noctie will either have to take or move. If Noctie takes, then the pawns are doubled. I get king c4. That's going to be easy for me to deal with the tension because the king will be forced to protect that pawn. And then we're going to have to go into counting all the pawn moves, the zugzwangs, who has more pawn moves to make until one side has to move their king. The alternative option is pawn to e5. Because, again, we give a check, and if fe5 happens, fe5, king e6, king e4, we get the opposition. But then one more time, we're going to have to consider who has more pawn moves than the opposition. Whoever has more pawn moves is going to be able to gain the opposition, force the opponent into a zugzwang where the king will have to be placed. Now, as I can currently count it, I believe we're going to be the side that has more pawn moves. As you can see, the slight little difference between the pawns indicates to me that e5 is pretty much a good move. After fe5, we get fe5, and if king e6, we're going to go king e4. Now, we have the opposition, but how are we going to be able to make progress? As we can see, Noctie plays h5. Now we know if we play h4, g6, g3, we are done on that side of the board. We're done on the king side. There are no more pawn moves to be made. And if a5, we might even try a4, because after c5, we know we have an extra move, which is pawn to b3. If a6, we'll play a3, and we'll just keep trying to outplay Noctie in that matter. So I'm going to start with h4. As you can see, a great move. As I already mentioned, that's one of the moves I'm going to play. a5 already played, not including g6, but that's okay. We're going to play a4. So stop any progress on the queen side. And as you can see, Noctie is going to have to move the king. If it continued with the pawns, we had enough pawn moves to offset Noctie and force the king away. Now, if we're going to continue with king f5, and I'm assuming we're going to see pawn to g6. Otherwise, we will just keep pushing our pass pawn. And this is a good moment to consider. where do we go? Do we go king g5 or do we go back, maybe to king f4? We probably want to go king g5. But again, we want to make sure we're able to calculate properly. So king g5, king e6, king takes g6, king takes e5, king takes h5. King d4 is the only way for Noctie to create any sort of pass pawns on the other side of the board. But we have g2 all the way to g8. So we're going to have 1, we're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to make a pass pawn into a queen. And Noctie, on the other hand, is going to take quite a lot of moves because it will have to destroy the pawns on the queen side, which will take quite a long time. So we are going to go with king g5. Let's see what Noctie does. It might be c5. Nope, it's king e6. But we still are going to take king takes g6. And afterwards, we're going to take king takes h5. So we're ready to push our pawn all the way. So king f5. Didn't really matter what Noctie did. Even if it went for the pawns, our pawn is promoting. So at this point, it's going to be a very easy conversion. We're just going to use our king and extra pawns. And lastly, we're going to go king g3, and we can force checkmate queen g2. So let's go back to the starting position and consider some of the other options that could have happened had we played a little bit differently. So in the previous game, we started with 1 e4. So I'm going to do the same thing here and play 1 f4, but I will try to do something else. Maybe give Noctie some defensive capabilities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Noctie play f6. Oh, interesting, a6. I'm going to let Noctie play f6, and then I'm going to play e5 before it's a check. As you can see, g6 is being played. Okay, let me consider, what should I do? I'm trying to make it a little harder for myself to win, so I'm putting an extra difficulty on myself. But all in all, I don't need to do that. But if I play c5, then there will be b5. No ways to infiltrate the queen side once a5 happens. But the reason I'm trying to force Noctie into playing f6, e5, f5 is to demonstrate the difficulties that my king will have infiltrating the opponent's position. That is the number one thing that we want. Not only do we have the extra pawn, but we also want our king to be able to infiltrate the opponent's position. So as before, I'm going to play king d4 and king e7. And if I play c5, it's not going to be a check. There's going to be b5. So no problems there. So I'm going to go g4. Let's see what Noctie does. And g5 played by Noctie. This is a wonderful moment to see that after f5, Noctie is not in time to make a blockade on the square. If Noctie could play king d6, c5, push my king out of the way, and play king e5, Noctie will be very close to making a draw. But in this situation, all we gotta really do is play e5, make sure that we give a check to the enemy king, force it back. Now, again, the question is, where are we infiltrating, right? How are we going to infiltrate? If I play c5, then there's going to be b5, and then after e6, there's going to be f6. And suddenly I only have an extra pawn, but nowhere to infiltrate. So I got to be very careful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reroute my king. King c3, king b4. I still want to go play c5, but after b5, I would have had the a5 square as an infiltration square. Now, Noctie plays a5, which is good. Also, it's good for me, also because I can play a3, king b3, king a4, and b4. See, it's all about trying to infiltrate on the queen side. The king side is already closed. There's not much I could do. I could potentially play h4 once my king comes here, but after hg, nothing really happened. This king cannot make any progress. It is basically stuck. There is no way that the king can attack any of our pawns. And even if f6 happens, we can always take that. And after king takes f6, we just have a protected pass pawn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with king b3. I'm just wanting to play king a4 and play b4 in that moment. We see c5. Finally, Noctie has shown very, very important weaknesses for us to exploit. If Noctie didn't play c5, we would have just gone king a4, a3, b4. Try to make some progress there, or king a4, c5 simply. That was the other alternative, breaking the pawn chain and being able to utilize the weaknesses. Now, of course, we can still play king a4 and try to go king b5. And the good news for us is we haven't moved these pawns. So these are free tempos. These are extra tempos. And pawn endgames, at some moment, you will have a king opposition happen. It could be in a knight formation. It could be in a bishop's formation. It could be just normal king opposition. It could be long opposition. There's different sorts of king oppositions. But if you have extra pawns to play, then that means that you could be the one to assume the opposition. Currently, let's say black was the one to obtain the opposition. However, if I just play a simple move like pawn to a3, now I'm the one who wants to play king b5. And Noctie has to waste the tempo because there's no good pawn moves. After king b5, if Noctie wants to preserve this pawn, it would have to play king to b7, but then it would have been far away from the pass pawn. Two weaknesses. One is our pass pawn. That's going to be a weakness number one for the opponent. And then the second weakness that we need to identify is bringing our king, infiltrating the opponent's position. Here, Noctie just played f6. All the moves are running out. So I could take this and then pre-move king takes b6, pre-move king takes c5, and then eventually promote my extra c pawn or extra f pawn. Doesn't really matter. I will pre-move these moves, for it is very simple now. I just need to make a queen, and the rest of the game is basically going to be over. But that's how we did it. Notice how we managed to reroute our king towards the queen side. It was very, very important. If we had not done that, we would have had a tough time winning. And after king e6, we will play queen f7, checkmate. And that's that. Have a good one, and good luck in your practice games.